our boiler's been on the blink. No, it's not broken. It's just it kind of loses pressure. It's really boring. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the internal workings of an English boiler. But yeah, it keeps dropping pressure. So we're like, oh, we'll call the plumber out and we'll have him have a look at it. There's obviously something wrong and I don't want it turning into like a bigger issue and then like my boiler exploding or something. So I phoned them up yesterday and they were like, yeah, we can send someone out. He'll be with you tomorrow between 2 and 3. So I like did that panic clean of my house. He obviously has to go into like every room to like do the thing with the radiators. So I cleaned like my entire house. I like brushed my hair, which is like a new thing. I even put on a bra.
Oh my god.
What are those?
We're trying our hardest. I've got real trousers on and like I did my makeup and my hair and everything. And he arrived a little bit late. And I said to myself this year,
is he cute? Is he like dentist
no,
level,
but he's just like the most delightful man. And I'll get onto Steve in a minute. Why is every man in my life called Steve? My postman's called Steve. My plumber's called Steve. It's so weird. Anyway, so I had this like resolution this year of like I'm not going to take shit off anyone. And so Steve was supposed to be here between 2 and 3, and Steve arrived at 5:45.
Oh.
And I couldn't be angry at him like whatsoever. So that resolution is like now out the door. I lasted 5 days.
Well, it's not like you had anywhere to be, at least.
I mean,
we can't go anywhere.
Like, a lot of Netflix to catch up on. And
I mean, that's the only bonus. It's not like you had to like, be in, like, wait in all day, and then you just like didn't turn out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not the point.
You're like, still.
Anna, that is not the point.
Like, still.
Sorry. I was trying. Look, see, my New Year's resolution is to be more positive. I am a ray of positivity.
I tried that once.
Yeah, I know. And then we had 2020. Yeah. So you can fuck off with your positivity.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Murder Friends, the podcast where 3 friends from 3 different countries talk about murder. My name's Alana, and I'm Canadian.
I'm Anna, and I'm American.
My name's Hannah, and I'm British.
So sit back and relax, you're among friends, and let's talk murder.
Well, we have entered lockdown 17, I don't know, officially, which I think we all knew was coming, especially us in Kent. We were pretty much already in it, so.
Yeah, not much has really changed. We were tier 4?
Yeah, so we are there. One thing that changed in my life, though, was the kids did not go back to school. So, joy. And so last lockdown, where the kids were off school last year, my daughter was in reception. So that's like their first year. They're like 5 years old. And all they did, because especially there was no preparation time really. Like all they did was at that age, just sent them homework to do. Like, and I would print it out, and it was stuff they'd already learned. It was just sort of, and like reading with them more and stuff like that. Because, they didn't expect us to try to teach 5-year-olds or 4 and 5-year-olds, like anything. Great. Okay. So it was like easy enough. I could like set her up with it, kind of go over a few bits. And it was still effort, but whatever. So this one, well, they're prepared and they've sent there's a whole Google Classroom set up and I have to like teach now. I'm like, okay. So I guess I feel really bad for people who have proper 9 to 5. Like when are you gonna, because you have to set them up on the laptop. You've got to go over the lesson, which is in a PowerPoint with them. There's math, English, phonics. Luckily, there's a phonics video because I'm going to try and teach her phonics in my American accent. Confused. And so there's a lady talking on that one. Then there's some other lesson. And then it's full on. Wow. I just was like, today was our first day. There were tears. Mine, not hers. And it was just and it's funny because it's math, right? So your teacher, there's okay, there's 7 apples. And then we're going to add 3 apples. And how many apples do we have now? There's these worksheets and we're going over the worksheets. And she did fine. She knows it already. She was okay with those things. The funny thing though is that they provide you with an answer key. So I'm cheers to that. I'm looking up.
Just in case.
You were 10?
Just in case you're a little bit confused.
Oh man. Thanks for that. Cool. But yeah, so that's how my New Year's has started. If praying's your thing, can you pray for me for the next 6 weeks while we're power through? But speaking of New Year's, we haven't actually got to chat since sort of like Christmas and New Year's. So did you guys want to, what did you guys do? What did you get up to? Any good presents that you were surprised about?
Well, I am very grateful and very lucky that I normally work from home. So other than I never leave the house, my life hasn't changed too much. But the problem is now, I don't know what day it is. I don't know what the outside world looks like. I don't know what people are normally doing, like, what a normal life consists of. So my Christmas and New Year were lovely, but it's just, every day is Groundhog Day. So while they are good days, they're just the same thing over and over again. So, I mean, Christmas was lovely. I ate so much. I don't even want to get into that, and kept eating our Christmas food over New Year's because we bought way too much. But being a foreigner abroad, Christmas is a FaceTime affair anyway, so that wasn't too weird for me because I would have normally done it online with my mom and my sister back home. So that was just like, it really is like every day is just the same as normal, which is like a really weird Twilight Zone thing happening over here.
That's good. That's quite similar for me. I just, normally as well, during like Christmas, New Year period, I still work out at the gym and still do something, as well as the eating and the red wine. But this year, they were closed, and I was very unmotivated, so there was just a lot of eating.
I had to, so I have an Apple Watch. I'm going to admit it. I had to maybe slightly lower my move goal a little bit because there's no way. This flat is so fucking small too. I walk from one end to the other end and it's like 8 steps. And I was like, okay, this is my whole space.
You're like, yeah, I got to 50 steps today.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing with the Apple Watch is like, yeah, you can change, like you can manually change how many like your move goals and stuff, but it's when your own Apple Watch suggests that you drop down, because you haven't been, that is ultimate like devastation when it's like, you don't move much, do you? How about we move you down to 260 calories? And you're like, you bitch, I can do it.
You're like, I can do it. It's like, and the thing when it tells you to stand up, it's like, I think I need to stand up right now. It's like when Netflix is like, are you still watching this? It's like, can my electronics fuck off? Like, can you stop judging me, both of you?
Yeah, you sit on the sofa just like angrily shaking your
you're
wrist.
just like,
I wish I didn't know that the shaking the arm works for the stand, because now whenever I get a buzz, I don't even have to check what it is. I know what it is. It's 10 to the hour. I have to stand up, so I just start shaking. Anyway,
exactly
that was my New Year.
Amazing. What about you, Hannah?
Yeah, it was an odd one, but it was okay. It was fine. I worked like right up to like Christmas Eve, and then sort of logged off at 1:00, and then just ate my body weight in crisps and chocolates. So that was fun. My parents popped over, like didn't come in or anything. They just dropped off like the presents. They like put them on the doorstep and then like knocked the door and then like scurried back to their car. And we did that awkward wave thing like across the road. I was like, bye, it's good to see you. So that was really sweet. But in New Year's, we did our like normal New Year's plans over Zoom, which was kind of depressing. But yeah, it was okay. Nice, and it was fine. I got the best present though. I'll have to send you a picture of it later. But James bought me a do you know how I like spooky stuff?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Glenda has a friend.
Wow, you've buried that lead.
And he hasn't got a name yet. But he is a vintage Pelham puppet. They're from like the 70s, and it's the skeleton, and we call him, at the moment he's just called the spooky lad because he just sort of sits around our house and does this with his arms. But I'll send you a picture later. So Glenda has a friend.
Oh no.
And I will send you a picture of him later. So we'll put it on the Instagram or something. It's great.
Yeah,
so that was the best Christmas present I had.
My brother-in-law had my brother too that really like I was quite shocked by. My brother-in-law gave me 2 these huge books. I opened them and they're 2 Encyclopedia of Serial Killers, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And I was like, wow, you know me so well. and the funny thing is you guys know him, and he's like he's the loveliest guy, and he's very straight-laced. Like, I was laughing about the fact that he like even bought them, because it was just so, it was just funny. And he just thought, oh, I'll help you with your podcast, which I thought was so
can't
lovely.
imagine him buying them. I can't imagine him going into a shop. That's so sweet.
I know. And that was really good, because I wasn't expecting that. So good things coming, guys. And my husband, actually, he saw this at my brother-in-law's house, actually. He had these, like, picture books made. You know, you can make your own, like, books with, like, loads of pictures and stuff in it. And he had one made of, so 2019 was, like, a big year for us. We got engaged, we got married. He had his 50th birthday. And then we had, like, I had a post-10 due. And he made this whole book of like all like of each event, like with tons of pictures, and I hadn't even seen all the pictures. I don't even know where he got them from, but it was all like where he captioned stuff, and like I just can't. I've got to show you guys at some point. It's so good. And he was like, "Oh yeah, you know, those nights was like staying up, and you'd already gone to bed. Well, that's what I was doing." And I was so blown away. It was such a good present. I was like, "Wow," because I was not expecting that. So that was cool, because it was sort of like we had this really epic year before 2020.
Well, at least you got it all done before.
Oh, I know.
March 2020.
Could you imagine?
I mean, you crammed everything in.
we crammed it all in. We just, Again, if you guys listen to our older episodes, I think we've talked about all of this stuff in real time. But that was cool. So same again. I had the same sort of Christmas, New Year's. I think we all did. So now just trying to get back on the straight and narrow, eat more vegetables, eat less cheese, and try to do a lot less of the arm shaking and just actually stand up.
No, I'm not doing that.
No.
I'm not ready.
New Year's, same bitch. Come on. So for True Crime News this week, I'm actually going to take you back to last year, because we never really got the chance to discuss it, and it was a huge thing in the true crime world. They cracked the Zodiac 340 cypher.
Yes.
So a quick recap. The man who nicknamed himself the Zodiac Killer, first off, who gives himself a nickname, super lame. He brutally attacked 7 people in 2 years, 1968 and 1969, and he killed 5 of them in the San Francisco Bay Area. He sent a series of letters, some written in English and others written in a code in ciphers, to newspapers. He sent a really big cipher. All the ciphers are kind of like named by the number of symbols within them. So he sent a 408 symbol cipher, which he divided into 3 chunks to 3 separate newspapers. And the San Francisco Chronicle published their portion, and it was cracked by just 2 members of the public, Donald and Betty Harden. However, he sent other ones as well, and this one, they call it the 340 cipher. It has boggled code breakers for decades, but 3 amateur code breakers, David Oranchak, Sam Blake, and Jarl van der Eyck, I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm so sorry if I fucked that. They've been working on it, and they finally cracked it. They sent their findings to the FBI, who confirmed that the group were in fact correct, and the 340 cipher can now be deemed as being solved. I don't know if any of you watched the YouTube they did a YouTube video explaining how they cracked it, and it was genuinely fascinating. I found it so interesting. They effectively just smashed it with computer science with a sledgehammer, and it was amazing. It was really good. They dedicate their finding to the victims, so David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, and Cecilia Shepherd, by saying, "We would like to dedicate our work that culminated in the solution to the victims of the Zodiac Killer, their families and descendants. We hope that this is a stepping stone towards finding justice for these people." And I truly think that that's the best thing about this whole solving of the cipher. So do you want to hear what the cipher says?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. So it says, "I hope you're having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise." Paradise in this all throughout is spelt with a C. that fucking infuriates me. It will send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life is life will be an easy one in paradise death.
Wow.
What a piece
That's
of
dark.
shit. Yeah, it's horrible. It's just such a twat. I'm convinced that he's dead now. I don't think we'll ever figure out the Zodiac Killer, who the Zodiac Killer was. I mean, we all know it's Ted Cruz, but I just don't think that's gonna.
Can you imagine what it must have felt like to have this? Because they're all amateurs, right? It's kind of like it's like the hobby that they've started and they got into, and then to be able to create something then breaks this code that nobody else has been able to decipher. What that must have felt like. Like it's very eerie, of course, when you read it too, talking about like having slaves in the afterlife and everything. But to be able to finally decipher it would have been insane.
Yeah, it's wild.
I think it's absolutely bananas. The way he wrote it was like it was the letters and the words went on the diagonal, and there was one chunk which he'd moved so he knew that it would pretty much be unsolvable. And as you said, they are amateur code breakers. Like, they have day jobs and they do this in their spare time. I mean, it's like, what do I do in my spare time? Play video games and sit in a fucking blanket fort and talk shit. And these guys are out here like cracking codes. But one of these guys was like, he worked in a warehouse during the day and then like came home at night and worked on it. And I think that's
incredible.
It's absolutely amazing. So there is other ciphers of the Zodiac which haven't been solved. There is one where the Zodiac wrote a letter in English and he put "my name is," and then there's a series of symbols which is apparently his name. No one ever knows, but because that cipher is so short, they doubt that they'll ever be able to figure that out. So that's a bummer. But I just wanted to recap on that little bit of news from last year because I think it is really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. Well done, guys.
Kind of makes you want to like pick up a better hobby, eh? Because when I'm done this, I'm going to go play Animal Crossing.
Hell yeah.
All right, next up for our one of two podcasts that we're reviewing today, we're going to chat about is Bed of Lies from the Telegraph newspaper. Have either of you listened to it?
I had listened to some of it.
Okay.
I've listened to all but the last episode and a half.
Okay, cool. So you have at least know what it's sort of, the style and what it's about, at least roughly. Now, The Bed of Lies is an 8-part podcast hosted by Cara McGugan from the Telegraph newspaper. I see your face.
That name.
This is when you
The
said
name,
it.
I can't, it's the way she says it, too. Sorry, I know it's really harsh. But yeah, from the Telegraph newspaper. I'm not going to get into the exact details of all of it because it's quite a complicated story the way it's told. It is a sort of a series of 4 different women and their stories, and then it sort of all comes together as the story is told. It begins and we meet 4 different women, like I just said, Rosa, Lisa, Allison, and Lindsay. These aren't their real names. They were all part of the activist communities between the 1990 and 2010. The groups they were active in were groups that protested animal rights, environmental activism, anti-racism, or anti-police brutality. They all started out telling their stories of meeting a man within their community and who became active in the groups, and how they fell in love with these men, had relationships, and some of these relationships went on for 4 or 5 years. They lived together, and one of them even had 2 children with one of them. So essentially, as the story unfolds, spoiler alert, so if you haven't listened, and actually I'm going to go and say this now, I think it's worth a listen purely because the story is just insane and it's not something I've ever heard before. So this is like a whole new topic. It's not your regular sort of true crime, and it's worth a listen in my opinion. So essentially, you find out at the end that these men were all undercover police officers. They were all seduced, misled, and manipulated, and they were victims of what has become known as the spy cop scandal. So the women, it's really horrible listening to some of these stories where, like, for example, one of the men, they were together, they lived together for 4 years. One of the guys sort of started to go off a little bit. He started acting strange. He seemed to have a bit of anxiety. And then one day he literally just disappeared. So all of his stuff was out of their flat, any trace of like something that had his name on it was gone. It was like he never existed. He just disappeared. Several other, each women have a different story, but essentially it's all the same thing where these men just suddenly, they think it's the love of their life and they just disappear. So as the women in the podcast start to go public with their experiences, discovered that at least 139 officers like infiltrated left-wing groups in this way. So, and essentially what these women were doing were, they weren't part of this big drug trafficking ring. They weren't, doing anything necessarily. I know there's probably elements of their protests that were considered criminal, that could get them in trouble, maybe like trespassing and things like that. But none of it was, maliciously hurting, anyone or necessarily out to commit crimes. They were literally just like activists about things that I think we could all relate to. I know, like Hannah, with your eco stuff, like.
Go on, fucking say it.
Could you imagine?
You're like one of them. Are you one of them?
Could you imagine if you found out that your husband, was then like a, undercover cop?
Yeah.
So you can see how it affected all the women and how some of them never ever dated again. One of them never was able to enter because you couldn't trust anyone. It was horrible. It's like a form of torture in a way. And like they ruined their lives, some of them. There's a public inquiry was announced 6 years ago, finally began taking evidence on the 2nd of November. There is something that they're trying to push for, the Covert Human Intelligence Sources Bill, which would seek to limit undercover police powers to prevent cases such as these, has recently passed its third reading in Parliament. Also noted that these police officers also had families, and this was done on purpose. So they would select officers with families and like children so that they wouldn't disappear into their undercover work necessarily. So they wouldn't like lose themselves, so that they always had something to go back to. But obviously their wives are also victims because their wives didn't know that they were essentially had a whole nother life with another woman going on at the same time. And it's actually really scary and horrifying just to like imagine, that sort of happening to you really. Now, in my opinion, I really enjoyed the podcast. I thought it was very interesting subject matter. It was quite unbelievable to me that it actually was allowed to happen. And I think that's what's going on now, where they're trying to limit stuff like this. Because like I said before, the things that they were involved in wasn't this, serious felony crimes that we feel like they warranted this happening to the women. They didn't deserve it for that to happen to them. They weren't endangering people's lives and stuff like that. So, and I think that's mentioned in the podcast too, is like, where's the balance here of like why this was necessary to sort of ruin these women's lives for what they were going to get out of it. The host, she was good at what she did, but she was a little bit grating. I think, Ilana, you said that
I've got feelings.
Didn't love her. What did you guys think?
I want to hear Ilana's feelings.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying this new thing. When Anna recommends a podcast, I give it a shot. I gave it the old college try, and our second podcast we actually talked about.
We had an agreement.
the second podcast is actually another Anna suggestion. So I went into this. I thought, hey, I'm going to give it a shot. And I think what threw me off was the host the most. And she narrates the story as if she's your buddy, which, girl, you ain't my buddy. I don't know who you are. And she would talk about things like, she would say like, and then the woman found this really crazy piece of evidence in her purse. Now, remember, we're going to come back to that, but first let's talk about vans. So vans are these things that they drive in the UK. And I was like, what? Like, what? And then, then she'd be like, okay, so just remember that story. Keep that in the back of your mind. Now we're going to talk about this. And I that lost me. If you're going to like narrate, just tell me the story. And I think compared to, we talked a lot last year about Canary, and I know I keep coming back to Canary. That podcast was narrated in such a like unbiased, direct, this is the evidence, this is what happened. And I loved it so much. Whereas this one felt like she was like, yeah, and we're talking about this, and isn't this crazy? And then we're going to talk about this, and remember this. And it just, that put me off. So I didn't finish it. It did kind of remind me, I think it was a Dateline episode where there's that one man who has like 9 different families and none of them know of each other. I almost thought it was going to go in that way, like the men were all the same person or something. So the revelation that it's actually undercover cops is quite surprising. And the story itself definitely needs to be told. Like, that's fucked up. It's one thing to infiltrate a group that you think is committing a crime. It's another thing to be so cruel to someone. Like, it's not necessary. It's just, you know, they're such low-level activists. Like you were saying before, it's not the fucking mafia. Like, it's not high violent crime or whatever. But, yeah, the story, really fascinating. But the narrator just didn't do it for me.
She totally reminded me of, do you know when you get, like, do you know when you get really drunk? Or no, imagine you're really sober and your friend's really drunk and your friend is trying to tell you a story. That's exactly what it was fucking
Yes,
like.
and there's so
Like,
many
tell me I'm wrong.
stories happening at once, and you're like, no, go back to this main story.
I have been the drunk girl and I have been the sober girl. Like, I know what it's like. No, you're right. The story's fascinating. The story's great. It's absolutely bananas. And, you know, that's fine. I knew what the story was going into this, so it wasn't like a huge like revelation. I knew the premise for the podcast. But the way she jumps around, the narrator jumps around, makes it unfollowable and uninteresting. I mean, there was one part where she had there's one part where one of the women find an item, like you were saying, and then she jumps into that story, and then you don't find out what the fucking item is until the next episode. And I'm really, really glad that I waited for all of the episodes to come out before listening to it, because I think at that point I would have just switched the whole thing off.
Yeah, that's when she starts talking about vans.
Yeah. And you don't find out what that item is until like 10 minutes deep into the next episode. And the item wasn't like a gun or like a police badge or, you know, something really nefarious, something that would have given the game away. It was a fucking bank card that had like a weird name on it. And it was like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like, make it interesting. Make it like, I know it's very interesting to these women. I'm not saying it's not interesting, but from an audience perspective, fuck off.
I think you're right about that. The way it was told was very confusing. And I listened to it week to week. But I was very interested in the story, so I stuck with it. But what I thought they should have done was, if they want to tell those 4 stories, maybe dedicate one episode to each story and then bring them all together at the end and reveal the whole story. Because it was like, you're trying to tell 4 stories at the same time.
Yeah, and I remember even at one point she says, okay, so there's a lot of couples involved in here, and the names aren't really important, so don't worry about the names. Just think about what happens. And I was like, but you're telling like 4 separate stories, and I don't know what's going on.
3 of them are named Mark.
But absolutely, it is like a drunk woman who can't keep her story straight. And she's telling you what she did last Saturday, and then she's telling you what you should do next weekend, and then she's telling you about some story at work, and then she's telling you how much she loves you and you're her best friend, and then she's telling you about something you don't know what it is. It's just all over the place.
Alana has obviously listened to me and Anna very drunk before, and I'm
It's like going out with these 2.
She's like, these bitches. But it was I think the story is really terrible and tragic, and I think the thing that really hammered home just how horrific the story is the fact that some of these women are suffering from like PTSD like to this day, and they're like pursuing legal action, and it's completely ripped their lives apart. And I don't think the police should get away with this at all. I understand the need for surveillance, national security, totally get it, but these women were just like fucking vegans who were good at using coriander in cooking, which was brought up numerous times, and it's just it's unimaginable, and I hate the police for what they've done. It's horrible. I'm sorry.
Who budgeted this money to like think that the money they spent, because there has to be like quite a lot to pay for an undercover agent to pay for a flat and pretend to have money, like go on holidays. They went on holidays. Like, where's that money coming from? Anyway, who thought that this was like a good use of budget at the very least?
Yeah, that's crazy.
At the very least. I guess rating wise, 1 to 5, I would say, which I'm going to probably rate higher than you guys, I liked a 3.5 to 4, only because I really found the story, like the whole subject matter interesting. If I can't remember her name that told the story for Canary, the journalist who did that, I want her to tell this story.
Yeah, if she could just tell all the stories, that'd be all right.
If she could just from now on, just only podcasts by her. No, but if she actually told the story and like it was just too scattered, like you're saying it was, but purely for the subject matter, it was just like crazy. So that's mine. What about Hannah? What about you?
Story 5 out of 5. Podcast 2 out of 5.
That's fair.
For that, for the reasons. For the drunk girl.
I don't know if I could give it a rating just because I didn't get even halfway through it. But I definitely think what you said, Anna, if one episode was one woman's story, I think that would have been way more engaging and a lot more easy to follow. But even still, if it was that woman talking, then I probably wouldn't have lasted anyway. That's so mean.
Cara
I'm so sorry.
I'm never going to forget that name.
I feel like that name is burnt into my soul.
Yes.
Like,
and she said, I feel
it would
like
be
she
like
says
my last words. Yeah.
A lot in the podcast. All right. Well, take it what you will.
Okay, so for our next podcast review, we are talking about the Piketon Massacre, which completely unrelated, but every time you type Piketon, it comes up as Pokemon. So I'm really sorry when I send you my notes. It's riddled with Pokemons. But this is a 10-episode podcast. Like I said, Anna had mentioned it. I had never heard of it, so I went into it to, see what it is. Bullet points, very interesting story. It's extreme and violent and so over the top. But unfortunately, like the last review we just did, I didn't really like the way this one was done either. And I don't know if Canary has just ruined podcasts for me, but we'll get into that. The other thing to mention, how many ads for hair dye was there?
Oh my
At
God.
least 2 an episode.
So
we'll come back to that as well. So the podcast dives into the Piketon Massacre, which took place in April 2016. 8 people, all belonging to the Roden family, were shot and killed in 4 separate homes in Pike County, Ohio. Almost all of them were shot execution style in the night, most likely when they were asleep. 3 young children, including 2 tiny babies, were left alive during the killings. One, I think, was even in bed with the mother who was shot, but the child was spared. The ensuing investigation soon became the largest in Ohio's history. But the case is not finished, which I wish I had realized sooner. There is a lot of discussion about facts, but there is a ton of sort of gossip and guessing in the podcast, which I really didn't care about. So the podcast is done from the journalist perspective. But because there has been no trial, there's a lot that they don't know. So a lot of it ended up being like speculation. And the journalists sort of have a conversation back and forth about it, which is interesting. But so much of it I felt was like, well, maybe it happened because of this. Oh, yes, it could have been this. And I just I wanted to know. There are some facts that are brought up, including that the Ohio Attorney General's office confirmed the presence of a hefty amount of pot. When they first brought it up, and they're like, "Oh, there was marijuana on the marijuana on the farm. Like they've got this giant acreage of farm." And I was like, "All right, like relax." But they had like 200 or something plants. Like it was quite an amount.
Operation.
They had an operation going on. Yeah.
So there is quite a bit of discussion on whether this was somehow drug related, and that goes on for quite a while. In November 2018, 4 members of the Wagner family, which was a family known to the Rodens, were arrested and charged with the 8 murders. Now, the connection that they really lean on is Edward Jake Wagner was the ex-boyfriend of victim Hannah Roden and the father of their 3-year-old daughter. So a large part of the motive brought up in the podcast was the custody of the child between Hannah Roden and Jake Wagner, which is fair. We see lots of different crime podcasts, about custody and stuff. But can you justify killing 8 people for custody of that child? Just kind of seems a little bit extreme. Because there are 10 episodes, they really have a lot of time to dive into different aspects. They talk about corruption from local politicians to the possible drug gang element to just general drug issues in the area. For me personally, I wanted to know more about the evidence and the police interviews and the facts and the investigation. And I'm sure more of that will come out when the trial happens, whenever that might be, but it hasn't happened now. So we don't know a lot of that stuff. One thing to note, like I mentioned at the beginning, every episode, even the first episode, starts with an ad for hair dye, which is quite surprising. I get that making money off of a podcast is very difficult, but there were a lot of ads. The one thing I did appreciate, though, was whenever it was going to cut to an ad, one of the narrators would say, okay, we're going to take a break here, and then it would sort of transition into the ads, which I actually liked because the subject matter is so fucking gruesome. I think to just splice an ad really fast in would have been like really bad taste, especially when it's for hair dye. So at least they kind of have, you know, some separation, but my God, there's a lot of ads, which was like just a bit off-putting.
Like a lot of ads.
Yeah.
Like a lot. Like it
and
was,
the episodes I think are like on average like 30 minutes. So you'd have like an ad right at the beginning, in the middle, and then closer to the end, I think. Overall, I thought the story was insane. I had never heard of it. And the fact that 8 people were like execution style murdered is insane. And they're in different properties and it all looks very professional. Like that is absolutely bonkers. I just really didn't like the way that the story was told, I guess. And I think I skipped most of episode 9 and 10 because it ended up being so much like speculation. Like, oh, we're not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe this happened or maybe this was the motive. So yeah, that kind of fizzled out for me at the end there. But did you guys listen to any of it, all of it, some of it?
I don't have much to add. I listened to probably 1.5 episodes, and my only note said hair dye advertisement. That's all it said. Hair dye advertisement. That's all it said. So I've really got nothing to add.
I listened to most of it. I think I missed off the last 2 episodes as well, pretty much, because it was... I saw this one and I was like, ooh, because I was interested in the story, because I remember when this happened, and I remember seeing like some news footage or like articles online, like aerial footage of their like farm when it happened, because it was so shocking for 8 members of a family to be executed in one night. Obviously, it was a very planned, coordinated, you know, it was crazy, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, you know, that sort of thing. So that's what sparked my interest, and I really wanted to like learn more about it because I didn't know much about it other than I knew 8 members of the same family had died. It reminded me very much of that shitty Jamie Kloss one. Jamie Kloss? Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
The way that was told. And I think that one was also told without there being a trial. And it was a lot of, like, fluff. There's a lot of fluff. It's like, you could have made it, like, 4 episodes, you know?
Yes.
And just have, like, let's get the facts. Let's know what it is. But I guess you're not going to make a lot of money off of hair dye ads with 4 episodes. So we're going to drag that shit out for 10. Keep talking about hair dye. Yeah, I think that was the issue. It wasn't great. It was like, for me, it was kind of like I started it and I was enjoying it at first because I literally just wanted to know about the case. So if you want to know about the case, in my opinion, check out the first like 2 episodes.
100%.
There you go. Then stop. Then you're done. That's all you really need to know.
After that.
Yeah, or Wikipedia. And hopefully when we have more, when they go to trial, we learn more about hopefully more information comes out and you sort of like figure out maybe what happened. So,
is there a date set for the trial, or is it just imminent, or is it upcoming?
I thought they mentioned a date.
I can't remember now.
But with the way things are, I would be not surprised that it gets pushed.
Yeah, of course.
Overall rating, though, I mean, like 1 out of 5. I think the subject matter is crazy, and like you said, Anna, listen to the first 2 episodes, maybe you get a general idea. The rest of it is fluff, and I kept like skipping through, thinking, oh, maybe there's gonna be a gold nugget back here. Yeah, there really isn't. I have done my due diligence for all of you listening. Don't bother.
Yeah, I agree. I would say like a 1.5. But like I said, listen to the first 2 episodes. You can learn about the case and what happened, and then you're probably good.
And then you can dye your hair.
Then you can dye your hair. Buy some hair dye.
Weird Crime Time.
So this week for Weird Crime Time, I fell into a spiral of looking at crime statistics the other day. And I was reading an article about West Midlands police and the number of arrests that they'd made. You know, like bedtime reading stuff. But as I read further down, there was a quote that kind of piqued my interest. And the quote is from Inspector Manager here from the West Midlands Police Criminal Justice Department. And it reads, "We've had a few odd incidents. One that sticks in my mind was a man found with a samosa between his buttocks during a search."
Huh?
What?
So, there was a man and he was in police custody and he was being searched and they found a samosa tucked between his arse cheeks. Now, the samosa wasn't the reason for his arrest or connected with his arrest. I actually couldn't find out why he'd been arrested, but this gentleman was concerned that he wasn't going to be fed in police custody or he was worried about the quality of the food. So he just, stuck a little samosa, down his butt crack. So
Was it in the wrapper?
Yeah, this is what I questioned. First off, how would you react to someone... How would you react if you were conducting a search of someone and there was a fried snack between their cheeks? How would you even bring that up? You'd be like, "Excuse me, sir.
Is this your samosa?"
Is this your samosa? Ugh. And yeah, you're right. Was it wrapped in anything?
Also, aren't they usually triangles? It's not really. If you're design flaw here, go with a sausage roll, mate. You might have a better idea of getting away with it because it's long and skinny.
Crack shaped.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, on the flip side, if you were trying to sneak in a little snack, what would you pop down your underwear?
Ooh.
Oh, that's a great question. Probably a block of cheese.
Yeah, but it might melt.
Like a hard cheese, though.
Okay. Like a Parmesan?
Yeah.
Just put a little grate it into your mouth.
Also, samosas are quite soft, delicate, aren't they? So if you had that between your cheeks and you're walking and stuff, wouldn't that just
it's gonna get crushed up? Yeah.
Explode?
Yeah, I just yeah, it's a whole thing. Anyway, to make things worse, following that article that I read about crime statistics, which was on Birmingham Live,
Nice.
they did a follow-up article on that subject, and the follow-up article was called "The Sheer Cheek of It. The hilarious puns as a man caught by police with a samosa in his bottom." Now, I'm not going to lie, I read this second article and they used the best pun that they had already in the headline and the rest were really, really weak puns.
Oh, no.
And one of the ones that was in the second article literally said, quote, "Did he not have a microwave to warm it up?" I was like, that's not a pun.
That's not a pun.
Bitch.
Pun, that's not a pun.
Not a pun.
Right,
That's just
Birmingham Life. Sort it out.
That's the comment. So, if you can come up with any better, samosa puns, food in between your butt cheek puns, or just general butt puns, then submit them to Birmingham Live, and I'm sure they'll do a third fucking article on this one topic.
Readers' butt puns. Yeah.
Tucked between your butt cheeks.
That's unreal.
Well, I think that's all we have for today. You can check out our website at murderfriends.com. You can check out our notes from today or any sources that we used for Weird Crime Time and True Crime News. You can email us at murderfriendspod@gmail.com. Send us any of your suggestions. We get them and we definitely share them and we discuss them and look forward to having things to review, especially right now, lockdown number 3. Follow us on Twitter, MurderFriendsPD, or Instagram, MurderFriendsPod. And we'll see you next time. Bye.